of Jasper burns. So could you please explain to us why would Canadians believe that this bill is actually going to protect the biodiversity of our ecosystems when you've proven that you don't have the abilities to do it right now?
Mr. Chair, the members of the Conservative Party should be ashamed of asking these questions. Between 2011 and 2015, there was 0 hectares of prescribed burns or mechanical removal around Jasper under their watch. They did nothing for 4 consecutive years, slashing the budget of $30 million every one of those years in forest management measures around Jasper, Mr. Speaker. Since we've been in power,
Chair,
we've invested in almost 1,000 hectares of managed forest around Jasper after they did nothing.
Mr. Chair, I guess he's not going to answer the. I guess he's not going to answer the question. He's just going to put blame.
You've been in government for 9 years already. I would love to table in this committee, Mr. Chair, the report from Parks Canada that shows exactly what I just said.
Mr. Chair,
well, we'll
please.
go back to Mr. Soroka now.
Thank you. So, Minister, you know, it's easy to put blame when you've been in government for already 9 years, but yet you still haven't done anything. The mountain pine beetle happened underneath your watch. You didn't do enough. Could you please explain how many acres of the mountain pine beetle are affected in the Jasper National Park?
So, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I would like to table the report to this committee that was prepared by Parks Canada, which showed how many hectares in the last almost 20 years have been managed around Jasper, which shows exactly what I just said. That for 4 consecutive years, they did nothing. We've invested to prepare more than 1,000 hectares to manage 1,000 hectares around Jasper.
And we'll distribute it, I presume.
So the question, the answer is about 154,000 acres were affected. And with that, you know, to the northwest of Jasper, there still is a lot of trees that were not burned, not touched at all. There's a lot of dead trees there from the mountain pine beetle. What is your plan to deal with this so we don't have another catastrophe and another section of Jasper, if not all of the town of Jasper, burns? What's your plan for these dead trees and to protect the town?
So while they've invested in 0 hectares for 4 consecutive years, since we've been in power, we've invested to better manage 1,000 hectares. 0, 1,000. That's the difference between their approach and our approach, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that sounds very nice. You want to bring out
table
numbers?
The
let's bring
that
out
shows
numbers
that in
then.
this committee.
So,
Yes, please.
So then we're looking at the fact that, you know, there's 32,000 hectares, roughly 80,000 acres were burnt in this last fire in Jasper National Park.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Question the relevance if we're going to focus entirely on.
Well, it's a stretch.
Issue.
I must admit it's a stretch,
how
but
is
it is about biodiversity. I'm not an expert in biodiversity, but biodiversity affects the health of forests, and I suppose the health of forests determine how vulnerable forests are to fires. I'll let Mr. Soroka continue. You have a little less than 3 minutes.
Okay, well, I guess my question is the fact that the minister even said in his opening comments about forests, so I don't understand this. But anyway, with that, they are planted about 5,000 new trees within Jasper National Park. 500 trees per acre is what it takes for a healthy forest. So out of 80,000 acres, you've planted roughly 10 acres to restore the forest. Don't you think that's basically a joke and you're really not doing much for biodiversity there at all?
What is a joke, Mr. Chair, is to have members from a party who don't even recognize that climate change is real and who are perfectly happy to let the planet burn by doing nothing to tackle the impacts of climate change, that have no plan whatsoever to adapt and to help Canadians and our ecosystems to adapt to the impacts of climate change, come here and take some kind of moral high ground on something they've done nothing on, Mr. Chair, for years and years and years. That's a tragic joke, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's very nice, Minister. So I've got another question then. You know, Minister Randy Bourcineau, appointed to the minister lead in Jasper's recovery, now that he's gone and resigned in disgrace, who in this government is actually in charge of helping Jasper to recover from this government?
The committee is still ongoing and still meeting. In fact, that at our last meeting, we invited the mayor of Jasper so that he can be part of the conversations that we're having for the reconstruction of Jasper.
So you don't have anyone named yet, the minister resigned last week. Are you going to be the person in charge? Who do we actually be able to contact? Because this government has lacked quite significantly in assisting the town recover from this fire.
Your government has lacked. You're right. You can call me. You can call the Minister of Emergency Preparedness. There's
okay,
a
we're
number
not
of
in
members
government
of,
yet,
of
Minister.
the
You
government.
do realize you've been there for 9 years, correct?
You realize that you did nothing for 5 consecutive years to help
So for
prevent
5
forest
years-
fires in Jasper. Nothing. Nothing.
So if the Conservative government did nothing for the years you're talking about.
You're absolutely right. The
So then from
Conservative government did
2015 to
nothing.
2024 is 9 years. Can you explain what you have done that's protected
Excuse me,
Jasper?
Mr.
Absolutely. We will be happy to.
Mr. Vancouverman, it's hard enough to follow this two-person exchange without
it is shameful.
the intervention of other members. I stopped the clock. You've got 30 seconds, Mr. Soroka.
So back to what I was saying then, do you have a lead as to who is going to help Jasper? Because the municipality is suffering substantially because of the fire that was started in Jasper National Park that affected their municipality.
A fire that was likely, according to scientists, a result of climate change, something your own party denies as being real.
Okay, Mr. Leslie, for a minute and a half.
It's disappointing that the minister's refusal to answer has limited my time to offer questions on what is a pre-study that I heard a swipe from the minister previously that this is somehow anything to do with politics, when the reality is the parliamentary gridlock has to do with the Green Slush Fund documents. The Auditor General found nearly $400 million of misappropriated funds with 186 different conflicts of interest, while only
of
sampling
clarification.
25% of this.
Sorry,
The
point of
fact that
question.
that is an excuse for why we need to do a pre-study is appalling to me. If you
Excuse
hand
me,
over
point
the
of clarification.
documents, we'd be much better off. We could move things
Ms.
forward.
Taylor-Roy, yes.
Thank you. I don't believe we've ever introduced a green slush fund, so perhaps the member opposite could explain what he's talking about.
Thank
Okay,
you.
it's
Thank
not
you
a
for that.
point of order.
Thank you
It's
for
not
that
a point of
intervention.
order.
And
Okay.
I want to come to the aid a little bit to my NDP colleague. The impugning of her motivations.
Your time's running.
That's fine. The impugning of her motivations regarding this bill, I find appalling. I don't know why the Liberals are finding it so hard to believe that my NDP colleague is actually just trying to improve this legislation. But what this legislation appears to be is a plan to make a plan. That I can only see being leading into a whole bunch more government bureaucracy. And since 2016, since taking power, the number of executives at ECCC has risen by 53%, which I find absolutely insane. So, Minister, in order to implement this legislation, will you commit to identifying internal savings rather than new money to make this legislation enacted?
You have 30 seconds, Minister.
Pas sûr que la question en rapport avec le projet de.
Well, the question needs to be related to the bill, but as I explained earlier, this framework legislation is important because our government and subsequent governments will be subject to a series of actions that we will need to take when it comes to transparency on the issue of nature. And I think it's important to have targets and an action plan to achieve those targets. The time's run out, unfortunately.
I'm
We'll
saying.
go now to Mr. Soroka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was asking you about the lead in recovery, and you said that's it for Jasper, that it's still at the committees to go and determine who that is. I was wondering if you asked the Prime Minister to remove your name from that list of being the lead in recovery because of how you failed at Jasper with the mismanagement of the forest.
I've answered that question many times, and as I said, it was your government did nothing for 4 consecutive years, slashed funding by more than $120 million. We've invested more than $600 million since we've been in power for measures
So
to
I guess
protect
that's
Jasper. So 120 millions of cutbacks, more than $600 million of investment.
Okay,
that's
so
what
you're
I have to
basically
show,
saying
and that's,
that you did not talk to the Prime Minister whether or not you would be the lead from the government side. I also asked the question about the northwest of Jasper that has not burnt in the forest, and all you gave me was an answer that your government had done nothing, but yet, like I said, you've been in charge for 9 years.
Mr. Chair,
When
can the minutes reflect that I'm in complete opposition to what the member just said, and he's saying I'm saying something that I simply didn't.
Oh, okay. So I'm standing corrected. Then the Harper government did do things, just not as much as you'd like then. Okay. So back to my original question.
Mr. Chair, Monsieur le Président, là, il met des mots.
Mr. Chair, he's putting words in my mouth. I didn't say anything that even remotely resembles what he just said. In any event, time's run out.